This video is sponsored by my Discord server. Click the link in the description below to join the Raptorverse today. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I wasn't sure if I was gonna make this video. And I really mean that. I was considering just not making it. And the reason for that is because so far, Death Battle Season 9 is too good. From a production standpoint, every episode in the first half has been enjoyable, at least in my opinion. While I don't think it's hit any of the major highs that Season 8 had for me, it certainly hasn't hit its lows either. If anything, this season's quality has just been super consistent, and good consistent, to the point where I've seen rankings of the episodes that vary immensely from one another. Ranking these myself was incredibly difficult because I really only have good things to say about them. I will come up with genuine criticism so I don't come off as a brain-dead fanboy, but just know that even if I put an episode close to the bottom, I still liked it. And of course, no one's ranking is the true objective ranking. Everyone's gonna have their own lists, and that's perfectly valid. So please leave them down in the comments if you feel compelled to do so. Also, I won't be including Excalibur VS Raiden in this. One, it's not out yet at the time of me recording this, and two, it's a bonus episode and I typically hold those to different standards. Alright, on with the show. Coming in at number 8, we have Scarlet Witch vs Zatanna. I really did not want to put anything at the bottom, and I know some people who really like this episode. And trust me, I like it too. I think it's a little overhated in fact. But this is the one that I generally have the least desire to rewatch, and not because I hated stuff about it, but more so because I didn't love much about it. Season 9 on average has very much felt like it's leveled up in quality. Everything feels special in one way or another. But this episode feels the most average out of the bunch. It's the one that most feels like it could have come from 1 or maybe even 2 years ago. And I know that sounds kind of harsh, but I feel like this has always been an issue with fights where the characters are too similar. They kind of just fall into the background. And I'd be lying if I said this episode lived up to its full potential. But I do have my fair share of praises for it. For instance, I really like how deep the script goes in terms of comic lore, and while there might be some overgeneralizations in the conclusion, I think they presented all the information in a good way that everyone could understand. I also wasn't expecting the animation to be as whimsical or as silly as it was. Yes, I would have preferred if they put more focus into the spectacle, but it gives the fight more personality and contrasts well with the other bits. I like Wanda and Zatanna manifesting other heroes. I like them growing past whole universes. Again, I don't have a ton of major complaints, but this one just happened to fall at the bottom for me. Still a good episode in my book. Coming in at number 6 and 7, we have Harley Quinn vs Jinx and Boba Fett vs Predator. I'm grouping these two together because they're basically tied for me, and I don't have a ton to say about either one. And it feels so weird to put them so close to the bottom because I enjoyed both of them quite a bit. If they were released in a different season, I could see myself placing them at a higher rank. I think my appreciation for Harley vs Jinx has gone down slightly since it came out, but I still like it just fine. I think the animation looks pretty good most of the time and shows off a lot of their skill sets, and the analyses in my opinion do justice to the characters. And while I didn't find the actual script or editing all too memorable, the episode's maniacal personality is really where it's at here, giving it so much flavor and making it genuinely fun to experience. And for Boba Fett vs Predator, I feel very similarly. It's a fun battle that looks good most of the time. I especially like the use of escalation and weaponry that persists throughout the whole thing, and the hunter vibe comes through very well, again giving the episode its own standout personality. The script was generally decent, and maybe the analyses could have used some fine-tuning, but I still think it's serviceable. These episodes to me are standouts not because they're perfectly made, but because they utilize the respective characters' traits and personalities very well, making them different. But as the season premiere and the mid-season finale, they can be plagued with some high expectations. I think if I really had to choose which one I like more, I would go with Harley vs Jinx only because I find it more fun to relive and revisit, and the track is so good that I can't even explain it. But in terms of straight quality, they're tied for me. Good episodes, but not the best by any means. Coming in at number 5, we have Magneto vs Tetsuo. I enjoyed this episode significantly more than I thought I would going into it, and that's mainly because I didn't think I had much to look forward to. I was very much feeling the burnout of comic book superhero fights and anime fights as well to an extent this season, and on top of that, the outcome seemed very obvious, making me wonder if the fight was even necessary. And I have to admit, it does feel a bit reminiscent of Korra vs Storm, and that the outcome was obvious, and the conclusion was going on and on on about how one-sided it was. But while I don't think I'd ever say this is one of my favorite season 9 episodes, the actual presentation of it saved it quite hard for me. The animation is creative, has a very nice sense of progression, and a surprisingly well done emotional center, one that works well with these characters. And while the matchup idea itself wasn't my favorite, I do really like the characters specifically, and it was cool to see Death Battle show off their amazing stories and how similar they actually are. Because at the end of the day, these guys do work well together thematically, and ironically enough, I do love how detailed the conclusion is for outlining their abilities. Plus, I actually really dig the track. I don't know if that's a popular opinion or anything, I just wanted to say that. So yeah, some things about the matchup don't sit perfectly for me, but all in all, very well done execution for sure. Coming in at number 4, we have Tanjiro versus Jonathan Joestar. This is probably the hardest one to explain for me, and it's at this point in the video where I'm starting to run out of prominent negatives to bring up. This is just a really solid, well-rounded episode that shows off two evil-slaying anime protagonists pretty damn effectively. I guess if I had to come up with some kind of criticism, I'd say I wish Death Battle better explained some of the scaling at the conclusion, like saying how powerful Tanjiro and Jonathan would be by defeating their respective main villains, or giving more concrete proof that Jonathan has speed similar to Joseph. It's not that I think Death Battle's statements are wrong, I just think they could have expanded on them better. But that's nothing that ruins this episode for me, especially considering everything great that it does. It explains quite a lot of the lore of JoJo's and especially Demon Slayer incredibly well. As far as Death Battles go, I think it serves as a well-written introduction to either franchise if you're not familiar with them. The animation, as to be expected, looks beautiful and feels like a real story with moments that feel so true to the core of the characters. You guys know what I'm talking about. The episode is well paced, has decent humor and good character representation for the most part. Overall, it has a lot going for it, and I think it's one that can be enjoyed by pretty much anyone. Whether you're a fan of these two series or not, you'll be able to get something out of it. Unless you didn't, in which case, sorry about that. Coming in at number 3, we have Omni-Man vs Homelander. When I saw this episode was coming, I was not immediately invested, to say the least. It wasn't my preferred matchup for Omni-Man, and like Magneto vs Tetsuo, I initially thought there wasn't much of a point to it because the results seemed so obvious. I mean, it being such a landslide does hold it back a little bit for me, I'm not gonna lie. But my god, Death Battle probably did the best job I could have imagined with this matchup, and I'm not exaggerating. Because they don't lie and say that the fight is close. They're not pretending that a hard-hitting debate was their justification for picking it. Instead, they embrace everything else that makes this fight special and use it all to its fullest. At first, I didn't love how quick the fight was and how they instead spent a lot of time at the beginning with just banter, but the more I think about it, having Homelander talk such a big game and then having a short battle with Omni-Man arguably dominating most of the time is actually genius. It perfectly outlines the fundamental difference between them, and it's so cool to see the course of their characters presented in this way. And of course, it goes without saying that the animation is beautiful, the analyses are fun and informative, the track is diabolical, and the whole personality of this episode is nearly unmatched. I did like the idea of Bardock versus Omni-Man, and I like Death Battle's Dragon Ball episodes a lot of the time, but even though it would have been a closer fight, I'm not sure I can say for absolute certainty that it would have been as good of an episode, because it is so much fun to watch these two specifically clash in their own maniacal ways. It's like Goku Black versus Reverse Flash. You can't just get that kind of personality from any fight. The final product of this episode proved to me that this was the one that we needed. And honestly, I couldn't be happier. Coming in at number 2, we have Hercules vs Sun Wukong. I know there are a number of people out there who didn't like this episode that much, and also some people who really didn't like the matchup. And with all due respect, I completely disagree with those people. Here we got a fight that I wholeheartedly did not expect to get, which is incredibly rare, and that's just a start. As a thematic fight that introduces the concept of using mythological figures, this just works so goddamn well in my opinion. I'm so happy we got something new and genuinely exciting, especially after what felt like quite a bit of repetition beforehand. Now don't get me wrong, this episode wasn't about to get a free pass from me just because of the episode being different. I mean, if the episode was god-awful, then I wasn't going to blindly defend it. But thank the gods, no pun intended, it does everything right and stands out as one of the best of the season. season. The animation and analysis presentation are done in such a unique way that perfectly fit the tone and theme of the matchup without detracting at all from the episode's quality. We've seen before how changing an episode structure too much can harm it in other ways, but here everything that is different, like the narration and the visuals, enhances the experience immensely. It makes the episode so much fun, and the lengths they go to in the script, talking about the characters and their mythologies, makes the analyses entertaining and even pretty funny at times. Is there more they could have gone over? Of course there is, but I think Death Battle really found the sweet spot for putting information and entertainment value together and making such a fun final product. I love it when Death Battle tries something new, and I love it when they knock it out of the park. So I have to love this episode, I just do. One of my favorites, no question. And last but not least, coming in at number 1, we have Thor vs Vegeta. Like I alluded to earlier and have said in past videos, Death Battle really knows what they're doing when it comes to Dragon Ball fights. And while I can understand some people's distaste for this matchup, I knew this one had the potential to kick ass, and man, it does that in spades. The animation has essentially everything that I love to see. A great looking, well choreographed fight where the combatants feel so much like the characters and feel like they're actually in an intense fight to the death. So much happens in this fight that further and further adds to the spectacle. It keeps a good pace and is overall the epic fight that a battle of gods should be. The track is pretty fun as well, which definitely doesn't hurt, and the analyses are genuinely entertaining, which for me is a requirement to make a really good episode, and thankfully I'd say this one has that. I also love just how thorough Death Battle is with both characters' traits and abilities, going over resistances, specific advantages, their most powerful attacks, and what they entail. They really leave no stone unturned in their analyses and conclusion, and that's something I really appreciate. And if you don't agree with some of Death Battle's specific estimations here, fine, you do you. Personally, I have no real issue with it, and frankly, I'm more so just glad they decided to stick to their guns, knowing that they couldn't satisfy everyone and just going with what they believe to be the most fair. I respect that a lot. This episode is the embodiment of what I watched Death Battle for. In-depth and informative analyses, genuinely well-animated battles that keep me on the edge of my seat, witty writing and engaging presentation, and most of all, a ton of fun to be found throughout. It doesn't really do anything wrong for me, and what it does right is so good. Maybe I'm alone in this, but for the time being, this has to be my number 1 Season 9 Death Battle, and I hope you guys are able to enjoy it just as much as I do. So guys, that's my ranking for Season 9 of Death Battle so far. Like I said at the beginning, everyone's ranking is completely opinionated and probably at least a bit personal, so if you disagree with me in any way, that's fine, as long as we're all being respectful about it. Leave your own rankings down in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and maybe even subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. But either way, that's all the time I have. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.